Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish Podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, July 22nd, 2024. On the show today, news. I see the country Bear Jamboree while wearing one of those under-the-shirt cooling fan thingies. And will Disney move on from the concept of Frontierland? Plus listener questions. Then in our main segment, Jim finishes the history of Epcot's Norway Pavilion. Let's get started by bringing in the man who points out that pickles and squash are nouns, verbs, and sports, making them the most versatile of the gourds. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
It's going well, Lennon. And speaking of pickles and sports, have you heard about this new trend of opening pickleball courts inside of now abandoned malls? I want to say this enterprising soul started it in Tempe, Arizona, back in September of last year at the Arizona Mills Mall. And it did so well, at least initially, Len, that the guy announced plans to sort of expand it out to 50 malls nationwide. Just one teeny tiny hiccup, I want to say a day or so ago, the Arizona Mill Mall guys terminated his lease. So he's scrambling to find another location for pickleball in Tempe. But yeah, I mean, this is going like gangbusters. I want to say we had one of those pickleballs at the mall thing open up just here in Concord, Massachusetts, a week or so back.
That's fantastic. I love the idea of somehow doing like a cross-promotional thing. And Jim, hear me out. Mm-hmm. Pickleball, but done on a Sears Craftsman riding lawnmower. If that is not an ESPN show right now.
Okay, again, that check goes to Len Testa. Wow. All right. Exactly. I would go straight out of Shark Week I would watching that, Len.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And we're kind of in that middle area where like, where basketball season is done. Football season hasn't started. I mean, we've got baseball, which is fine, but this is sort of like the lull in major league sports, and I think this is prime time to start things like this.
There you go. And again, you could mow the lawn at the same time, so it's multitasking. I mean,
yeah, it's basically Wimbledon at that point. You're on grass.
There we go.
It's the Wimbledon of pickleball.
There we go. Come on, folks. Let's make this happen.
We're 3 paragraphs into a treatment here, Jim.
Okay.
Just saying.
Okay.
All right, let's do a quick shout out to our Patreon subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Trey Kwan, Madeleine, Sean Wilkes, Robert Miller, Derek Dubois, and Michael Butera. Jim, these are the Disney Imagineers hard at work designing the next generation of Test Track post-show while it's being refurbished. So far, they've got hands-on games with activities such as installing a car seat while your in-laws watch, paying a toll booth attendant using only the spare change stuck at the bottom of your cup holders, and preventing your kids from eating God knows how old McDonald's fries they find between the seats. So that's a cross-promotional thing with 2 sponsors. Synergy, Jim. True story.
Again, these ideas, I got gold.
They're just... Imagination is the one resource we'll never run out of. All right. On to the news. The news is sponsored by touringplans.com. Touring Plans helps you save time and money at theme parks like Walt Disney World. Check us out at touringplans.com. All right, Jim, as expected from years past, Disney's going to run extended evening theme park hours at Hollywood Studios this summer and fall, while the Magic Kingdom runs its Halloween and Christmas parties. So attractions that are likely to be open just because they were open at the same time last year. Basically, every ride in the park. So Aliens, Rolling Saucers, Runaway Railway, Smuggler's Run, Muppet Vision, Rock and Roller Coaster, Slinky, Star Tours, Toy Story Mania, and the Twilight Zone Tower Tour. Basically everything except Rise. And my guess is, Jim, help me out here from a conspiracy theory perspective, that Rise isn't running because it had cannibalized sales of individual Lightning Lane. Or they need the maintenance. They need the time for maintenance.
Okay. All right. Let's lean into maintenance. Okay.
Maintenance. Let's go with maintenance, right?
Okay.
Right. Assume positive intent. That's my philosophy for this week.
Okay. I'll take it.
Also, Disney's announced the Parks and Resorts panel time and date for D23. You're going to this, right, Jim?
I am. I'm still a little concerned about this new idea of the convention, with the event itself being held at the Anaheim Convention Center, but these big Munga panel presentations being held at the Honda Center and having to rely on buses to get from the convention center over to the Honda Center. This looks like a disaster waiting to happen. But again, as Len said, just a moment ago, positive thinking.
Positive
it'll
thinking,
be fine.
Exactly. Assume positive intent. It'll be fine. Exactly.
There we
All
go.
right. So, so Saturday, August 10th at the Honda Center, from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Josh tomorrow. We'll be there talking about the future of the parks. But one of the other things on Saturday, I think, Jim, and you're going to be there, so I encourage you and everyone to go to this. There's a panel titled "Disneyland Foods: Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow" with Disney cookbook author Pam Brandon. So have you met Pam?
Oh God, yeah. In fact, I think, doesn't she have a brand new book coming out this fall? I think I may have already pre-ordered it.
She does. So Pam's written all of the Disney cookbooks. I've known Pam for like 20 years, and she's fabulous.
Okay.
Yeah. So she has an incredibly developed palate. Like I have been with her in restaurants in Walt Disney World and asked questions like, tell me every ingredient in this dish so I can make it at home. And I think you guys have heard my story of how I recreated Canada's cheddar cheese soup. That recipe came from Pam. So she's a wonderful person, very talented chef. If you guys get a chance, go see that.
Okay.
Fantastic. All right, Jim, Country Bear Jamboree officially opened last week as well. I happened to get a preview beforehand. Here's something interesting. The new show is about a minute longer than the old show, as far as I can tell, based on, watching videos from YouTube. So is it kind of surprising, Jim, that the new show is longer than the old show, just from a capacity perspective?
Now, when you say the old show, is that the trimmed down version of the old show? Remember, they lost the...
Yeah.
Okay, so...
The most recent version was 11 minutes, yeah. Oh, sorry, 10 minutes, yeah.
That was my understanding in conversations with folks at Imagineering when they lost the Mama Don't Whoop Little Buford and that sort of thing. The sense was, okay, we may have been a little aggressive here, the shortening the show length. And at 11 minutes, that allows you to get 4 shows an hour. You have enough. Again, it's the classic story about Florida that you need to give people in Florida a little more time to get in and out of theater because they're moving slow. It's hot.
Right.
But yeah, that allows you a show virtually every 15 minutes. And
so the capacity of this show is just under 400 seats. So it's 4 shows. An hour. That's just under 1,600 guests an hour in capacity. That's basically Big Thunder Mountain. I mean, that's decent capacity for that. All right, fair. All right, so the songs are all new, and when I say songs, it's really a verse or two for most of these things, because obviously, if you've got 10 songs, you can't do all of that in 11 minutes. Starts with Country Bear Musical Jamboree, which is a new song written just for the attraction. Then we get Try Everything from Zootopia. We get Kiss the Girl from The Little Mermaid. A Whole New World from Aladdin. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I would love to hear the outtakes from that, from Mary Poppins. Fixer Upper from Frozen. Remember Me from Coco. You've Got a Friend in Me from Toy Story. And then they end with Bare Necessities from The Jungle Book. The outro music is Come Again, which is the original song from Country Bears from 74. So a couple of things here. Just visually, the attraction looks great. The bears look incredible. The lighting, the costumes, everything is shiny and new. That looks really, really good. When I was there Saturday, which was, I believe, the first preview show of this entire thing, the audio mix was a little bit off on Try Everything. So the vocals were actually so low. I not only couldn't I hear the words but because it's a country arrangement, I couldn't recognize the song. But they looks like they fixed that, so that's good.
Okay.
Also, have you seen how they've redone Liver Lips to be Romeo?
Yeah. Again, what's kind of interesting about this take on Country Bear is, with the exception of the new intro song, the musical jamboree, the original song, this is all Disney catalog stuff.
Yeah.
And I would argue that 80% of it is a home run. In fact, it's interesting that you zeroed in on Try Everything from Zootopia, because while I love the idea of partnering, Bonnie Bubbles and Beulah with Trixie, because that means that set of characters gets more stage time, sort of like, well, you're about to talk about Teddy Bear and Wendell. They get more stage time for A Whole New World. I just don't know. Again, I don't know if Try Everything was a good fit for this show. I think it's not just the issue there is the arrangement. I just think it's not a great song, and I know now I get hate mail from Shakira fans, but what can I tell you? So.
I mean, the thing there, I used to go to Country Bear Jamboree just because I knew it was being looked at for changes, and I wanted to boost the attendance numbers, one person at a time. Also, it's air conditioned, and I thought the exit song, the Ballad of Davy Crockett, was really well done. Here's the thing. So the Try Everything is from Zootopia. Remember, we're in Frontierland.
Yep.
So in Frontierland, we canonically know about Zootopia, and we know about The Little Mermaid. And not for nothing, but A Whole New World is literally also played about 100 yards away in Mickey's PhilharMagic. We could be a little more creative here with the properties from which we take songs.
Well, it's so interesting you say that, because I don't know if you remember in Brother Bear, they had a wonderful Phil Collins song called basically Welcome to the Family. And it was one of these things where I was listening to the honestly pretty generic Country Bear musical jamboree intro. I mean, if there's a song that ever sounds like it was written by AI, it's that song. Yeah, insert phrase here. It's just sort of like, on the other hand, again, you had a song by Phil Collins in a movie about bears. I mean, how low does the fruit have to be hanging?
That is fantastic. A couple of things kind of stuck in my craw, if you will, on this. The previous version of the show, Teddy Barrow would end her song by quoting Mae West's character in the 1933 film She Done Him Wrong. And the line from this 90-year-old film, Jim, was, "Y'all come up and see me sometime." Delivered in whatever sultry a manner as an animatronic bear could muster, right?
Yes.
And that line has been edited to, "Y'all swing by and see me sometime," referring to Teddy's swing. And for the love of God, I have to ask why. I mean, that line has been there since 1974, I think. And the film is actually old enough to be in the public domain. I don't think there's anyone in the audience that would consider that even mildly risque at this point, right?
I do not.
I mean, 19 million people visit the parks. I'm sure they get some complaints, but I just don't see it, right? And
the only thing I can point out here is that in the 71, when this show first came online, it was the rise of the retro film houses, and
right.
W.C. Fields and Mae West were having a moment because people were seeing their movies again for the first time on the big screen. And so for them to quote Mae West in that window of time makes sense.
Okay.
Where now Mae West is, oh yes, the wife of Bob East. She's a lovely woman.
So you think it's a great movie ride problem, that the reference is simply irrelevant to modern audiences?
There we go.
I would actually feel better with that explanation.
Okay.
The other thing that kind of mildly irked me, and I love using the word irk because it makes me sound like an old angry man who shouts at clouds, is All the Guys That Turn Me On, Turn Me Down was removed. The song was a legitimate pop song from 1970. It's 54 years old. It's by the Stonemans. And not for nothing, but Pop Stoneman is in the Country Music Hall of Fame. We're replacing that with Fixer Upper from Frozen. I mean, in an attraction called the Country Bear Jamboree. So this is one of those things where I've seen it once. I'm not entirely sure I need to see it again. Type of thing. So this is like I don't know here.
I think I would be a bit kinder grading this thing. I mean, again, the intent was to turn this into a celebration of the Disney song catalog. I think largely they did that. And you mentioned all the positives. The figures look great.
The figures look great. Lighting, excellent. The animatronics look fantastic. Yeah.
But again, I have yet to see it in person. I will do it the next time in Florida. I've seen it online from multiple different folks who've been kind enough to post it. And again, I would say it's 80% of a great show. So we'll just leave it at that.
Also on that day, Jim, so it was a Saturday, it was 94 degrees in the Magic Kingdom. Laurel and I stayed at Grand Floridian, so we walked over, and because it was 94 degrees, I had ordered one of these. Have you seen them? They're belt attached battery powered fans. And they're actually advertised on Instagram as like being being for the Disney parks, which is how I got sucked into it. So I think I paid like just under $50 for them, and brought it into the parks. It charges via USB-C cable, and so I was like, yeah, let me go try it out and see if it works or anything. So 94 degrees. I thought it worked pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Like on a scale from 1 to 10, I would rate it a solid 7, maybe an 8. A couple of interesting things. One is there are actually 2 clips
Mm-hmm.
on this thing. It's like the size of like half a soda bottle.
Okay.
Right. Clips on your belt. Has 3 speeds, low, medium, and high. And I wore it for about 4 hours, and it kept cranking on medium speed. For 4 hours. A couple of interesting things, though. It has 2 clips. One clip is for your belt. The other clip, which I didn't realize for 10 minutes, is actually to tuck your shirt into, so the bottom of your shirt does not block the intake of the bottom of the fan, which is pulling in air. Okay, so it took a minute to figure that out. I should probably read the instructions before I try these things. But here's the thing. Like, when I was walking around in Frontierland, where the pavement was probably 120 degrees, at that point, it was basically just blowing hot air up my shirt, which wasn't bad, right? Where it really shines, Jim, is when you walk into an attraction, a shop, or a bathroom, and you get cold air conditioning air running up your shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, Jim, I was like, how many of these could I wear on my person and not look like an idiot, or more like an idiot, right? Like I was like, could I have 3 of them on and have that work?
Well, I just to explore the idea a bit further here. I mean, again, you walked over from the Grand Flow.
Yeah.
Let's talk about maybe getting a couple of hundred of these, and you could have been the equivalent of a drone.
Could I hang them from a hat? Like, I'm trying to think of all the ways I could clip this to my person and still be hands-free. Yeah. I mean, there was a point where I was in the Emporium, and I was actually, I think I'm a little bit cold here. Like, I'm not cold, but there's a chill, right? It was that good. So it works, right? It works for at least 4 hours. I haven't actually run the thing at high speed to see how long the battery lasts, but I was telling Laurel, like, if using this means that I need to carry around one of those big, 2200 milliamp hour batteries along with this, I can see my way to that. So a tip for listeners, you can see these online for $45, $50. If you go to Temu.com and search for the word waist fan, they're under $20 shipped. So yeah.
Cool. And then they make Julian fries, as I understand it as well.
Yeah, you can set up in front of the oven and it's like a little air fryer thing. Yeah.
There we go.
But here, this is an example of one of those things where the technology kind of worked the way it was supposed to, and I would wear it again. It is a little bulky, it takes a little bit of getting used to. The only 2 issues I saw with it were this. One, just in normal sort of like walking around the parks and using your wallet or Magic Band or whatever, you kind of do bump the speed setting on the top of the thing. And the other thing is this: when you're on an attraction and you're seated, the bottom of the fan, the air intake part, does get blocked by your legs or your hips. So maybe just turn it off then. And that saves battery life anyway. And if you're in an attraction, you're already air conditioned anyway, so that's fine.
This is true.
Yeah, but overall not bad.
Okay.
But the other thing I was thinking of, Jim, and I want to get your opinion on this, while I was walking around Frontierland, is this. Is Disney moving on from the concept of Frontierland? Right. And let me give you some thoughts here. And let me just say too, this is a half-baked idea that I am now saying just to sort of like go through my thought process. Right. So we all know that the American frontier lasted until 1890, and we know this because the American census said it in 1895. Okay. None of the recent changes to Frontierland are in the spirit of the original Frontierland. So if you consider the antebellum Splash Mountain has been replaced, and rightfully so, right? Tiana's Bayou Adventure canonically is set in the late 1920s, which is well after the end of the American frontier. We've removed the Frontierland Shoot Arcade, because of guns. We just talked about all of the country songs in Country Bear Jamboree, the original country songs, have been replaced with Disney music. And again, I suspect, and again, this is just a half-baked theory, it's really hard for Imagineering to design a modern story that would fit into the original concept of Frontierland without being problematic, right? So consider the needle that Imagineering would have to thread to tell a story that guests would want to see themselves in when you consider, right, in the actual American frontier, slavery was or was not legal, depending on what time you pick it, right? Women and people of color didn't really have the right to vote and other rights. Guns figured prominently in all the stories and all the legends, right? And as Laurel points out, I don't think anyone in Imagineering really wants to answer the question of who exactly Fort Langhorne is supposed to be protecting us from, right? Also, also it was a time when we kind of used the country's natural resources without a lot of thought as to sustainability or future generations, right? And there are exceptions to this. So I was talking with someone who is an excellent historian of America, who will not be named here to protect the innocent. There are stories of black cowboys like Nat Love that are nothing short of adventure, right? And then in some U.S. states, women did have the right to vote as early as the late 1860s, right? And so, for example, universal suffrage was part of Wyoming's state constitution by 1889, right? But even with that progress, right, there's still considerable bigotry, right? It's not like everyone agreed with these changes, right? And so I mean, and here's the problem, right? If Imagineering makes one of these stories, right, tells the stories of, black cowboys or whatever, I think the problem from Disney's perspective is that probably half the country thinks of Frontierland like a John Wayne movie, right? And I say that as someone who thinks The Searchers is one of the best films of all time, right? My dad loved John Wayne films. I grew up watching John Wayne films. I like John Wayne films, right?
Yeah, you and me both. Worth noting here that when Hong Kong Disneyland opened in September of 2005, it did not, in fact, have a Frontierland. I mean, for example, there was no Rivers of America. There was the Rivers of Adventure, right. And Tom Sawyer's Island was replaced by Tarzan Island. Worth noting, though, that when it was decided that they'd expand the park, they did, in fact, put in a teeny tiny little Adventureland, Grizzly Gulch. That's where the
Adventureland or Frontierland.
This is the expansion just beyond the railroad tracks, where they got the Toy Story Land, they got Mystic Point, and the Grizzly Gulch. It still kept the Adventureland section, though. So anyway, it's just sort of like you're not wrong. They're hesitant to step into that space until they find sort of a self-contained story. It's like, okay, that kind of works in the American West, but right. Let's do a silly version of the American West, a place where bears get involved with dynamite.
Right. I note that the versions of Frontierland that we most associate with the original Frontierland all now exist outside of the United States. Like France has that, and Japan still has Splash Mountain, right? So I think other cultures are fine saying this is our depiction of the American West, such as it is. But as far as Americans, I think that's changing. I mean, one solution is we just convert all this to New Orleans Square, right? Mm-hmm. New Orleans did exist in the frontier. You can kind of squint your eyes and make a case for it, which I think would be significantly less problematic, unless you really don't like the expansion of federal powers that Jefferson had when he went during the Louisiana Purchase, which is a whole other thing, right? Maybe we talk about that in Liberty Square. Who knows?
Okay. So.
All right. Anyway, if you guys have thoughts on this, let me know. On to listener emails from Steven via our Patreon channel. And Steven says, hi, Jim and Len. There's been a bit of an online discussion about Tiana's Bioadventure animatronics struggling with Florida's heat and humidity, and people have been pushing back, setting Hagrid's over at Universal as a counterpoint. And Hagrid's, in this case, is another attraction that has significant downtime. I know you've talked previously about the triggering system for Tiana's animatronics, but I'm curious if there's any there when thinking about the climate, Hagrid's versus Tiana's, etc. Thanks so much, Steven. And Jim, I mentioned this because in the last week, Tiana still seems to be having some technical issues, including significant downtime in the morning of one day last week.
I guess for me, there's the one Tiana on the load hill.
Yeah, on the left, yeah.
Yeah, that is really exposed to the elements. But every other animatronic figure is significantly inside of the building.
Right.
And one would argue basically climate-controlled conditions. On the other hand, Hagrid, when you see the Hagrid outdoors dealing with that oversized Scroot, the fire blasting thing, I mean, he's basically out there open to the elements.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to say here. I know that these are some of the most sophisticated animatronic figures that Imagineering has ever done, and as a result, there are going to be some issues.
Right.
But we are now 2 weeks past the grand opening? 3?
Yeah.
And they had a whole month.
It's been running for a month and change. Yeah, considering previous.
Yeah.
When I wrote it this past weekend, I had noticed that in the last scene before the big lift hill, none of the jumping water fountains were working, which is kind of frankly disappointing given this thing's a month old,
Yeah.
And I know for that particular effect, it requires the fountains and all of the water prep to basically do really good laminar flow, which is hard, right?
It is.
It takes special equipment. But still, I mean, this is something Disney's been doing for 50 years. So it is a little disappointing to not see that effect work this soon after opening.
I had heard that one issue they're dealing with now is obviously, again, this version of Tiana's Bayou Adventure is open. So a lot of the talent, a lot of the folks who were on the front lines of this have already decamped for Anaheim. I mean,
right? Yeah, they're already in Disneyland opening up. Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of left to the folks in ops in Florida now to figure this out, make it work. And so, again, trying to be positive here, they'll figure it out.
I will say this: I got to ride with Laurel for her first ride last weekend, and she loved it. And one of the things she said is, I can't believe that they put so many animatronics in the ride. And then I was like, well, if you count, there's significantly less. It just seems like there's more, which, I mean, hats off to Imagineering for that, to use fewer animatronics, but position them in clever enough a way to make it feel like there's more is good, right? So that is actually an accomplishment and something that they did really well.
Okay, let's take the successes where we can get them.
Oh, yeah. All right, and here's an email from Brooke who says, hi, Jim and Len. Many of us refer to Walt Disney World as home and have long wanted to bring more resort-related Disney touches back to our actual residences. I absolutely love many of the murals, sculptures, and soft goods throughout the resorts. Am I crazy to think Disney should offer more of these items for sale? I know DCL's Wish has an art kiosk where you can order prints of many of the works of art that adorn the ship. Why isn't this offered at the resorts? I would absolutely pay hand over fist for a print of the new monorail mural at the Contemporary, or even the painting with flowers and Moana silhouette that hangs near the toilet in the Poly Rooms. And let me just say, Brooke, if I didn't already have a twin sister, I swear we were separated at birth. And I say this as someone who, with Laurel, actually designed a stone mural for my house to replicate the entrance of the Land Pavilion, right? Like that was really cool. Yeah, I all of this stuff is fantastic, and there's concept art like the John Hench Epcot murals where their character gradings are. That if there was a full size, wall-sized mural of that, I would buy it and install it. I don't know.
And let me tell a tale out of school here, because and again, this happened 30 plus years ago. This is back.
Statute of limitations is expired.
There we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was when the Disney Inn was shutting down to be turned into Shades of Green. And as a prior service member, I got a call from
a person
who basically said, if you were to, say, be at this entrance at this time, I might have a piece of art for you. And those lovely paintings that featured sort of the touches of 1937 Snow White. Yeah. But what was interesting is I was among a couple of folks who'd gotten friends who called from friends of the project, and there was definitely a last copter out of Vietnam field.
Last lifeboat off the Titanic type of thing. Yeah.
There we go. People were carrying things out of open doors of the hotel to the effect of this is going away.
Yeah.
So you can have this, but move quickly before security gets here.
And that's the sort of stuff. Like, I don't collect Disney theme park merch. I collect things from the parks that are one-offs, like that remind me of specific pieces of history. And some of them are like so deeply personal they wouldn't mean anything to anyone, right? Like, I have a part of the ride mechanism from Dumbo because it was the last ride that I rode for the first time in Walt Disney World, right? So stuff like that, like just silly things. But yeah, stuff like this, like this stuff is going away and we're never going to see it again. I mean, one, from an historical perspective, it's cool to have, but two, like, imagine you had a mural or a sculpture or something like that, or even soft goods, from the parks. Every time you use that, it reminds you of Disney World.
It does.
Like, why would the company not want that? Yeah, so I do think you can get soft goods.
Also, I'm blanking the name of the cast member. It's backstage by Team Disney. I mean, mind you have to know a cast member to get in there.
Cast connection.
There we go.
Cast connection.
And
yeah, true.
More often than not, furniture and that sort of thing from the actual hotel show up there.
Yeah.
So cast members get dibs.
Oh, that's actually a good point. So Brooke, yeah, if you have a cast member friend who can get you into cast connection. That's one thing. The other thing I'll mention, Jim, have you been to the flea market in Lakeland?
Oh, I have an uneasy feeling that a lot of stuff that night at the Disney Inn turned up there.
I was going to say, Jim, if you visit that, it's going to bring back some memories of that night.
There we go.
Brooke, if you ever wanted, say, for example, an entire set of bedding from the first version of Animal Kingdom Lodge Jumbo House, that's the place to go to get it at very, very reasonable prices. Like, you could probably outfit dinner service for 12 from the Contemporary Resort for very, very low dollars. So I would say next time you're in Central Florida, when you rent a car, head out to the Lakeland Flea Market and take a look. That place is full of Disney World memorabilia at very, very cheap rates.
Yeah, check it out.
We're doing a public service here, Jim. This is basically one long PSA.
There we go. Your house is about to get very cluttered, Brooke. I'm just saying. Okay.
Well, the thing is, they have China hutches from from Yacht Club. You could just store it all in there.
There we go. It's a plan.
All right, folks. Exactly. Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim finishes telling us about the history of Epcot's Norway Pavilion. We'll be right back.
You know, with those big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. I mean, they're always magically jacking up the price, leaving you wondering, what happened? Whereas with Mint Mobile, when they say plans are $15 a month, they actually mean it. All of Mint Mobile's 3-month plans are only $15 a month, even their unlimited plan. And all plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text, all on the nation's largest 5G network. And I have to tell you, given that Nancy and I live way out in the woods of southern New Hampshire, directions to our house actually include the phrase, when the pavement ends. To now have the super strong signal that comes from being able to tap into the nation's largest 5G network, well, that means no more drop calls, which used to happen all the time with our old wireless provider. And did I mention, when you switch over to Mint Mobile, you get to keep your same phone, the same number, even all of your existing contacts. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/DisneyDish. That's mintmobile.com/DisneyDish. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/DisneyDish. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Hey, this past Friday, Nancy and I finally got around to seeing Inside Out 2. Pixar, per usual, did a great job. We loved all of Riley's new emotions: ennui, embarrassment, anxiety, and envy. Mind you, envy, in real life, isn't all that lovable or productive an emotion. What is it they say? Comparison is the thief of joy? And if you've been spending a lot of time actively envying what others have, comparing your life to how others are doing, that's not exactly a mentally healthy thing to do. So what's the best thing to do in a situation like this? Therapy can help you focus on what you want rather than what others have, which is a mindset that would then help you start living your very best life. And if that sounds like something you'd like to try, well, let me introduce you to BetterHelp. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service. It's entirely online with over 35,000 licensed therapists standing by, ready to help you when it comes to things like, developing positive coping skills or learning how to set boundaries. BetterHelp is convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. To get started here, just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Look, if you've listened to this podcast previously, you know that back in the 1990s, on the heels of my divorce, I did some pretty stupid self-destructive things, and therapy, it gave me the tools that I then needed to get that all under control. More importantly, it made me realize that I deserve to be happy, and you do too. So stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/DisneyDish today to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DisneyDish. We thank them for sponsoring today's show.
And we're back. All right, Jim, remind me, where do we leave off on this story?
Well, we were talking about Epcot kept trying to get a Scandinavian pavilion off the ground, so to speak. I mean, they were talking with potential sponsors as early as 79, 3 years before Epcot Center officially opened in October of 82. But now, finally, June of 1985, the Imagineers have gotten all their puffins in a row. They have this consortium of Norwegian corporations, 8 of them, who have agreed to put up $35 million to build this new World Showcase Pavilion, which are officially known as Norway Gateway to Scandinavia. Downside, Len, of having 8 companies fund your Epcot edition, as veteran Imagineers will tell you, it's often tough to just keep one sponsor happy, but 8 of them, all with their own agendas, their own views of what a Norway pavilion should look like, what it should say about this northern European country, and
it's like trying to herd herring.
Oh. I love that. Okay, that's cool. But again, you got to keep everybody on board. You got to keep everybody happy until this thing actually opens summer of 88. So, right from the get-go, WDI is behind the 8 bell. Nor Show, that's the official name of this consortium of Norwegian businessmen, have pretty much laid down the law. That's like, look, we're going to fund a 90,000 square foot pavilion. 65% of this thing, we're talking 58,000 square feet land, that has to be set aside for retail dining and exhibit space. So you only got 35% of this thing left, 32,000 square feet to house your attraction, which is now supposed to compel people to not just go visit the Norway Pavilion, but to go visit Epcot.
And so 32,000 square feet is like 2/3 of an acre? 3/4? It's not a lot.
No, it is not. And it's especially not, Len, if you're looking to do a boat ride, because a lot of that square footage now has to be eaten up by the trough the boats travel through.
Oh, yeah, just storing the water tanks. I mean,
the back of house aspect of this. I mean, and again, you nailed into one. You have to have a giant reservoir out back. You have to have a boat dock for maintenance. You have to have a filtration system, a sizable filtration system to deal with all this.
I think at this point, back of house becomes top of house. Like you start putting stuff on the roof.
No, you have to. You have
and then
to.
You cover it in grass, just like they do in Norway.
So, as Len has described here, you now suddenly you don't have a lot of room for actual show scenes along your trough. Yeah. More to the point, you don't have a lot of money left to build the show scene. So, but because Epcot needed more rides and still does today, WDI was going to do whatever it had to in order to get this much needed World Showcase edition across the finish line. And by the way, this was going to be the original storyline of Sea Venture. That was the original name for this marquee attraction, and it stayed Sea Venture, Len, right up till late winter, early spring of 88, some 3 months before this World Showcase Pavilion opened, when somebody in Disney finally checked and was like, oh, there's another company that already has the copyright on that. It's like, dang.
Oh, is that it? Really?
Yeah.
It's a copyright issue.
So, all right. So here, and by the way, this is from the June 1985 issue of Eyes and Ears, the in-house newsletter for cast members. This is how the cast members were told what was coming at Epcot. This new World Showcase Pavilion's main attraction will take visitors on a fantasy voyage to the legendary land of the Midnight Sun aboard small Viking boats patterned after the dragon-headed crafts of Eric the Red and his fellow explorers. Then goes on to say, in the tradition of such famous Disney attractions as Pirates of the Caribbean, the adventure will take a waterborne route from a present-day village on a Norwegian fjord up a cascading waterway and into the Norway of old. There, Legendary figures from the land of gnomes and trolls will be brought to life through the Disney art of audio animatronics to lead guests on a search for the Rainbow Road to Valhalla.
Okay, Jim, let me pause you here. So far, this sounds like somebody's read the lyrics to Led Zeppelin's The Immigrant Song. It was the early 80s. I mean, these kids probably grew up in the 70s. I'm just saying.
I'm blanking the name of the comedian who also pointed out
Jack Black.
The effect of Space Mountain as a roller coaster ride in the dark. I used to do that in my closet listening to Led Zeppelin.
I was riffing on the Jack Black Washington Kennedy Center tribute to Led Zeppelin, where he's like, "These are great rock and roll songs about Vikings." Anyway, all right. So go ahead, continue cool. with this description. Go ahead.
Okay, so you're floating in a man-made river, 16-passenger Viking craft. You travel up a sloping whitewater rapid into the land of Norse legend. You teeter at the edge of a mountain waterfall and emerge from the darkness into a panorama where multiple images would depict contemporary life and the accomplishments of modern Norway. And in here, you'd see scenes of Oslo, its parks and historic buildings, wooded mountains providing unparalleled views of the romantic harbor in Oslo, for tourists and winter sports for visitors around the world. And you'd also get to see tiny fishing villages and rich farmland along the coast and the valleys of Norway. These would appear as brilliant images surrounding Disney World visitors. And as the voyages returned to safe harbor, they would then step out into the picturesque village square, which forms the heart of this showcase. So a couple of key differences in this, Len.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like we got most of that, but what did we not get?
Well, first of all, you did not board your boat in a modern Norwegian fishing village at the foot of a fjord. Instead, you boarded in front of a giant mirror depicting a mix of visual elements celebrating Norway's rich heritage and its vibrant future. Mm-hmm. And again, once your boat got upstairs, again, it was supposed to travel up a whitewater rapid, an idea that Imagineering borrowed from Disneyland's Pirates of the Caribbean.
Sure. And we got that.
We did. Okay. We did. But then you were supposed to encounter this group of animatronic trolls who were supposed to help you as you search for the Rainbow Road to Valhalla, which, by the way, Len, that is the path that Norwegian heroes followed when they transitioned to the next world. So,
yeah,
wow.
Again, you've said this before on the show, but it's tough to incorporate death as a theme into a ride and still sell T-shirts about it.
There we go.
Okay,
there we
all
go.
Right. It's been done, but not without some difficulty, you know. Right.
This is true. Okay, your boat gets back down to the ground floor of the structure. You are then supposed to float through this dark space. And again, quoting directly from that Eyes and Ears article from June of 85, where guests are supposed to be surrounded by a panorama where multiple images depicting contemporary life and the accomplishments of modern Norway. And what does that last bit sound like to you, Len? Do you remember the Spirit of Norway?
The Spirit of Norway film, yeah.
There we go. And remember, guests were herded into the theater after they climbed out of their Viking longboats in a modern fishing village.
Jim, I remember sitting, like, because I like the film, I would sit and watch it. And if you remember, the backs of these seats were these, like, splayed wooden things, bent wood, right?
Yeah.
But that movie was apparently so uncompelling to most tourists. I remember watching a grandmother with an actual walker move that walker as fast as I've ever seen a senior citizen move to not be trapped by the closing doors of that movie theater. I remember thinking, like, this lady really does not want to see this film.
Yeah.
It was like she was training for the Senior Olympics that moment. It was like, she's moving.
But again, not to put too fine a point at it, but Disney had promised North Show that they would deliver these elements. And face it, if we were doing it today with flat screen technology, with projection mapping technology, floating through a dark space with these sorts of visual representation would have been easy. But in 1988, Mid 1980s. This was a big ask.
Well, because you couldn't use cathode ray tubes because of the space, and you couldn't do back film projection from the back because you got 32,000 square feet.
Yeah,
you're not going to take 400 of that for a film.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But again, this is one of North Show's must-have items.
Yeah.
And Disney couldn't come up with an affordable, practical way to do this through panorama. North Show insisted on a make good, which resulted in, okay, let's move our modern fishing village to the end, which will be a place we hold several boatloads of people so we can then load them into a theater where they can sit down on bench seats. In fact, the interesting thing, Len, there were 9 rows of bench seats. This theater could hold 200 people. And I've the entire run of the show, I don't think 200 people ever saw this thing.
No, again, I mean, 100 would be a stretch.
Yeah. The supreme irony here is Maelstrom, the ride from beginning to end, was 4 minutes long. The Spirit of Norway film was 5 minutes long.
Compromises were made.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
But anyway, they needed a chunk of real estate.
I was going to say, at this point, you start having the hard conversations about how much retail space you need. And I can imagine, I know how that goes.
And that was the thing exactly. Yeah. North Show, there was no give.
Yeah, I know.
Like, look, 58,000 square feet of this thing is retail. You guys figure out how you do the make good theater and the $70 million movie. And more to the point, by the way, the cost of making the $70 million 70 millimeter movie has to come out of your attraction budget.
So what year was this? When were they doing these negotiations, Jim?
They finally got a deal signed in 84, announced in 85, and construction underway in 86. Again, building, as we talked about on the last installment of this series, right next to the Scandinavian themed bathrooms.
And here's what I'm thinking, right? Disney's going into these negotiations, and you're probably dealing with executives, senior executives from these Norwegian companies. They're probably old enough where they actually fought the Nazis in World War II.
There we go.
There's no chance. I mean, Disney is excellent in negotiations. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're very, very good. There's no way they're competing with that. It's just not. No. Okay.
All right.
These proposals had virtually no chance of succeeding. All right, go ahead. Yeah. All right.
So this means there's a reduction in scope. You have less money to do the ride because you now need to make this 5-minute long $70 million highlight reel of Norway. Right. And so out goes the trolls helping you to find the Rainbow Road to Valhalla idea. And the first half of the show now becomes static scenes of a Viking village circa 900 AD. And by the way, that's another aspect of the ride that kind of fell by the wayside. I mean, once you get past the talking Odin head, you are not the way, sirs, to Pagum this way.
Right.
You were supposed to have gone 1,000 years back in time. You're supposed to go from 1988 to 900 AD. And again, I think that's a piece of storytelling that fell by the wayside. But
and that's a shame because Norwegian culture goes back that far.
It does.
The stave church in front of the pavilion is dated to the year 1200.
It's a spectacular history, and which Disney did try to honor. Now, mind you, again, getting back to the reduction of scopes, the AA figures that you saw in those Viking village scenes were actually copies of figures that have been used in Spaceship Earth and Horizons. It's sort of like how the commander-in-chief from the Hall of Presidents wound up at Spaceship Earth.
Yeah. Noted Greek philosopher Grover Cleveland.
There we go.
Yeah, exactly.
And let's not forget about eunuch Howard Taft. Anyway.
Three words I was not expecting to hear today, Jim.
There we go. William Howard Taft, I want to be. Okay, so the 4. All right, anyway. Now, what's kind of interesting to cover a variety of sins here. Okay. Because, again, you're now trying to do show scenes in a building where you already were compromised about needing room for your boat trough and back of house and that sort of thing. So a lot of these scenes, especially in the Viking village, are incredibly narrow. I mean, the wall is like 3 feet away from where you are. So to hide that aspect of it, the Imagineers, well, wait a minute, it's the land of the midnight sun. Let's make it dark in here.
A true dark ride. Yeah.
A true dark ride. But also, let's make it blacklight paint. So it's like, ooh, look, the Aurora Borealis.
Is that why we ended up with blacklight effects in Mail?
That's it exactly.
Really?
You're trying to hide stuff.
Wow.
Also, due to budget cuts, Maelstrom went from a dozen or more trolls down to one real animatronic figure, the one with 3 heads, and a handful of animated props. Also, Rainbow Road to Valhalla. They opted to fill that space with some not entirely successful animatronic bears.
One of them moved, right?
Yeah, it flapped its paws.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's like, hey, get out of here, kids.
I'm being very generous with the word moved there. Okay.
Yeah. But on the other hand, you're not supposed to really be paying attention to this because you're going backwards in your Viking boat,
right,
which is the first time guests were able to experience this sort of thing on a Disney ride.
Yeah.
And also remember, as they described in the article, your Viking boat was then supposed to come out to a stop with half of it hanging out over a picturesque waterfall at the front of the Maelstrom building. And in fact, you were supposed to be able to see that moment, Len, as you were walking around World Showcase Lagoon. Look up and see half a Viking boat suddenly sticking out of a mountain and go, oh, I want to ride that.
Right.
Ooh, what is that? However, again, in one of these moments where in hindsight, maybe not a good idea, the Imagineers, to make North Show happy, agreed to hire noted Norwegian architect Birger Lamberts Nilsen to do the exterior of the show building, while the country's very best interior designer, Ulla S. Hort, she handled the interior of all the shops and that sort of thing. And just downside of doing this is Lambert Nielsen put that Viking boat teetering over the waterfall moment so far back that guests walking around World Showcase, well, they couldn't see it. Hell, half the people who were standing outside of the building in line to get on the Maelstrom couldn't see it. It's
funny that you mentioned this because I was standing at Akershus the other day and I looked over and I forgot that was there because I see it so rarely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oof, okay. This might be one of those times where it's like, we're going to go a little over budget here and everyone's going to be cool with it.
Well, it's interesting you mention over budget because Len, I'm hang on. I'm going to show you a copy of this document that I'm not supposed to have from March 7th, 1988 that talks about Imagineering's new directions. And in this document, it actually uses the phrase Norway is 26% over budget, late, and creatively compromised.
On the other hand, the soundtrack is exceptional. Yeah, okay.
There we go. On the other hand, the only thing that prevented the Imagineers who were directly associated with this project from being fired is in the same window of time, and I'm quoting again from that same document, Typhoon Lagoon is 37% over budget. It's 10 months late and significantly compromised. And Pleasure Island is 102% over its original budget.
Yeah. You know what?
67% over its revised budget, 8 months late, and again creatively compromised.
My God, if you're on a status call and you're Norway, you're like, well, you know what? Why don't we just let Pleasure Island go first on the status update, and then just keep asking questions until time runs out on the call.
That's right. I'm so sorry. We'll talk about our issues in the next meeting. But again, everything. The Imagineers kept telling us it'll work out. I mean, we have our thrilling finale. We have our Viking longboat. Once it teeters out over that wall, it changes direction. It slides downhill into a raging storm in the North Sea, and lightning flashes overhead, and waves batter your boat, and you barely miss hitting this giant cement pier that's holding up an enormous offshore oil rig, which is towering overhead. And we talked on the last installment of this series about how they actually did a test at 1401 Flower Street where they brought in a Tesla coil to do the lightning effect live in the space of the storm. And
beautiful.
And there were people from safety. It's like they're in a boat in the water.
This is where you send the health and safety people on vacation or off on a field trip somewhere. On that day.
So that didn't happen. But the storm at sea high wave thing.
Oh right, because it was simulating a North Sea storm, right?
It was, and it was in place right up to Maelstrom's soft opening, which was held in June of '88 as part of the official dedication. In fact, then Crown Prince Harold and Crown Princess Sonia, by the way, Len, check before we started today, these two are now Their Majesties King Harold and Queen Sonia of Norway. But again, they came in for the official dedication ceremony, and they were joined by prominent members of the Norwegian press. And there was one Norwegian journalist who got on the soft opening of Maelstrom and actually fell out of the Viking longboat as he was riding through the North Sea seam.
I mean, at least it was a member of the press and not a member of the royal family, because that would have been... International incident is not the way to kick off a ride.
Yeah. There we go. And now the Imagineers, because they had access to the closed circuit, the security cameras. They knew what happened. The guy stood up. Yes, that's exactly. Stood up in the boat, trying to get a picture of the pier, lost his footing and fell out. But his very expensive piece of professional photography equipment fell in the water, and because he was part of the party that had come over with the royal family, Disney felt compelled, we'll cover the cost of your camera. We'll replace that. But then, because they didn't want to do the exact same thing for every stupid tourist who did the same thing in Maelstrom, the Imagineers were told, look, turn off, dial down most of the effects in the North Sea scene. And so, anyway, Maelstrom officially opens July 5th, 1988, 2 months after the Norway Pavilion itself opened May 6th of that same year. And to be honest, they needed that extra month after the soft opening to figure out how to do the North Sea scene without its effects, and never actually figured that out. But at the same time, remember, Len, this is the summer before Disney MGM opens. The third theme park doesn't open in May of '89. So this is how Disney World promoted this Epcot edition. It's like, when was the last time you went over a waterfall backwards? Had your life threatened by a nasty 3-headed river troll? Came within a whisker of a 12-foot tall polar bear? Challenged whitewater rapids and braved a thunderous storm-tossed North Sea? The last time, maybe the first time, you ride the Maelstrom, the new thriller at Epcot Center. It's a sea adventure of legendary proportion, now open in the fabulous new Norway Showcase. So come, conquer the Maelstrom. All you need are the guts of a Viking.
You know, Jim, if you take just that first paragraph, when was the last time you went over a waterfall backwards, had your life threatened by a nasty old 3-headed river troll, came within a whisker of a 12-foot polar bear, challenged whitewater rapids, and it braved a thunderous storm-tossed North Sea. That is the advertisement for the very best Disney Cruise Line shore excursion I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, why are we not doing this? I will book this trip right now. DCL, I know you're listening. I know you're listening.
All right. Or at the very least, the folks at Adventures by Disney. Hey, we just came up with your new itinerary.
Meet the new boss. Same as the old boss. All right.
There we go. Okay. Anyway, to bring this full circle, September of 2014, we learned that Maelstrom will be replaced by an attraction based on the Disney mega hit Frozen, which arrived in theaters in 2013. And after more than 27 years, the final day of Maelstrom was October 15th, 2014. And me personally, looking back at Maelstrom, I have to admit, I sort of missed that cool fiber optic effect that happened directly over your head if the troll sent you back over the falls. Yeah. But if we're being honest here, this boat ride, in my opinion anyway, was a bit of a botch. But that said, one of the coolest things I've ever heard associated with the Maelstrom ride is something that you and your compatriots on WDW today did upstairs in the Norway Pavilion space, in their corporate event space. Can you talk about that?
All right. So when I was doing the WDW Today podcast, we would do sort of an annual or biannual fan meetup, and a few hundred people would show up, just like for our stuff. And we decided I think it was late. It was after the ride had closed, so 2014 or 2015. Every year we had tried to do like one crazy fan event. So one year we redid the entire ride audio for Spaceship Earth, and it became, instead of the history of communication, it became the history of our podcast. and we gave people headphones and an MP3 file to download as they got on Spaceship Earth and did that. So every year the things got more complicated, right? So this one year we decide we're going to recreate the entire Maelstrom ride after it closed, but outdoors and only using props that we brought into the park and the members of the fan community that listened to the show. And we were originally going to do it in the area between Norway and China, out in public where that big access door kind of is. And we had masking tape where we were going to sort of like do the entire ride layout, but in miniature. Like, you know, we had blueprints, and we're just going to tape off what the ride was like. And there were maybe a couple of hundred people. So, you know, as soon as we started gathering, security had obvious and valid concerns about that, right? Like what's going on. So Becky Menken from Mouse Fan Travel had organized the event, and literally a couple of minutes before we were going to run this thing, manages to sweet talk her Disney Parks rep into letting us use the corporate lounge. Like we did not plan it ahead of time. So imagine the verbal skills you need to convince someone at Disney to give you access to a corporate lounge in the next 10 minutes. Like, I do not possess those words. That's just not me.
Wow.
Becky did it,
amazing.
right? And so we go inside and we basically gather everyone. So everyone, and again, it's a couple hundred people. Everyone is either an animatronic bear, you know, or something, or they're part of the story, or the post-ride film. We actually recreated the post-ride film.
No. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So remember in the post-ride film, there was a ski jumper, right? We actually grabbed someone's 12-year-old daughter, put ski goggles on her that we brought, made her bend forward and run down this little thing and go whoosh, and then try and land. Just so much fun. It was, it's one of those things where like I still know people from that setup, whether we talk about it like, you know, now 15 years later or whatever, 10 years later, we're like, you remember that time? It's like, oh God, yeah, that was great. That was fantastic. So.
And I just, and that being how you got in upstairs to the corporate meet space, which, by the way,
I've never heard smooth talking like that before. I mean, you want to talk about like, you've heard like great dating pickup lines, but that pales in comparison. The best pickup line you've ever heard pales in comparison to the sweet talking that happened here. And I just to this day, it's the most impressive bit of Disney sort of like, not I want to say coercion, but like sweet talking somebody that I've ever heard. It was amazing.
And then just to bring things full circle here, remember, North Show, one of the things they asked for, or actually insisted upon, is that there would, in fact, be corporate meeting space so they could bring their clients over and show off what they had done at the Disney parks. And so when it came crunch time, it's like, well, we need space for your theater. Would you give up any of your corporate space? No. So,
exactly.
Which is why you had space for a couple of hundred people suddenly going upstairs and that sort of thing.
The next time I meet any executive from Helly Hansen, I will thank them profusely for the favor they did for me those many years ago.
There we go. Okay, just one final note here. The Spirit of Norway movie, again, Len was mentioning the lady with the walker moving at speed. It still did what it was supposed to. This thing opens in June of 89, or is it June of 88 it opens? By 1989, Norway is happily reporting they have seen a 200% jump in tourism from the United States.
Yep.
And when people were asked, it's like, oh, I saw this lovely film while I was at Epcot. So,
I mean, I've told the story. I literally went to the real Norway because of the Epcot Pavilion. And and I've been back a couple of times since then. It's Norway is beautiful. You guys should go. It's
absolutely.
Not only that, but like I tried. I've told you this story a couple of times. I tried to find everything in the Norway Pavilion that in the real Oslo, and you can do it. Like the Viking ship. Remember in the old Spirit of Norway film, a little kid runs up to a to the black Viking ship in the museum. So I'm in the Viking Museum in Oslo, and I'm looking around. There's like 3 people in this museum, and I don't speak Norse. So I happen to walk up to this person, and I'm trying to think of like, how do I pantomime a request like, will you please take a cell phone video of me running up to this boat like I'm 12 years old, right? And fortunately, the first person I walk up to is Canadian. So he's like, okay, I'll do that for you. And like, no judgment or anything like that. They're like, so I run up, and then I send it to Laurel. I'm like, do you know what this is? And she knew what it was, which was great. But
I have to ask, did you actually, because I watched that film before we recorded today, and the 12-year-old boy touches the several thousand-year-old boat.
No. I'm not getting kicked out of Norway. No.
Okay. Just wanted to ask. I just
Did not
the
do
footage
that.
include you being wrestled to the ground by security? Okay, never mind.
But the stave church that's in front of the Epcot Pavilion is actually in the Oslo has an outdoor museum of Norwegian buildings, full size buildings you can walk into. It's a museum of buildings. I mean, it's in a massive park, right? And you can walk into this one, and it's obviously much larger than what you see in Epcot, but the exterior is exactly the same. It was relocated from the city of Gaul, and it was built in the year 1200. And the amazing thing is, this thing's built of wood. It's 4 stories tall. You would think that at some point lightning would have hit it just out of the sheer odds. But this one survived, and it's one of the few remaining examples of classic wooden stave churches in Norway. The other thing is, and to this day, I remember this, the thing that the Norway Pavilion gets the most right is the wood smell inside that church, because it is exactly like that in Oslo. It smells of pine, old pine forest like that. Yeah. And Norway's just beautiful. The people are wonderful, super friendly. It's the most expensive city I've ever been to in my entire life. But you can, and Akershus. Oh, we haven't talked about this. So Akershus, the restaurant, is designed after Akershus Castle, which is actually in the port of Oslo and was 3 blocks from where I was staying. And the thing that I think Disney doesn't get enough credit for is how dedicated to authenticity they were there. Like the fabric designs are exactly the fabric designs that you would see in the castle. I think the only compromise Disney made in all of Akershus, other than the fact that one's a castle, one's a restaurant, the only design compromise they made is the real Akershus Castle has wooden floors, and obviously with tourists, that's not going to work in Florida. So it's tile and concrete. But other than that, it is. I mean, you can find pictures online. It's pretty darn close. Like, it's good enough, and they did really, really well. So if you ever want to see the entire Norway Pavilion, the only thing you got to visit is Oslo, and you can do it all probably in a day and a half.
And again, worth noting here that a lot of that crazy level authenticity came thanks to Bergen Lamberts Nilsson, who did the exteriors, and Ulla S. Hort, who did the interiors. So
yeah, I would definitely go back. Last year I was on a Disney cruise, The Dream, out of Copenhagen. We stopped off in Oslo. I'm definitely ready to go back. In fact, I was trying to go for a couple of weeks this year. We'll see what happens. But yeah, if you get a chance to go to the real Norway, it is even more beautiful and fun and wonderful than the Norway Pavilion in Epcot. So, and that's what I think. Like, people don't get about World Showcase. Like, there's a lot of criticism that it's fake countries, and the thing that I remind people of is it's not designed to be a substitute. It's designed to be inspiration to go see the real thing, right?
There we go.
All right, fair enough. All right, cool. Yeah, great job, Jim. This was good. Brought back a lot of fun memories.
Fun show.
Also, Eunuch Grover Cleveland. What was that? William Howard. Thanks. That's gonna stick in my mind.
William Howard Taft, but I'll have to check on that. So.
All right, fair enough. Thank you for that. All right, folks. That's gonna do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our most recent show with Imagineer Jim Scholl covers the transformation of Snow White dark rides from scary to cute. Check it out at patreon.com/JimHillMedia. On next week's show, it's the anniversary of the opening of Rock and Roller Coaster at Hollywood Studios. Our special guest will be Imagineer Jim Scholl, who designed the ride, and I will tell my personal story of what Steven Tyler orders for room service. You can find more of Jim at JimHillMedia.com and more of me, Len at TouringPlans.com. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey, who you'll find in his giant rubber duck inner tube at the 2024 Humuchita River Festival on Saturday, October 26, 2024. My advice is to park in the Franklin High parking lot in beautiful downtown Meadville, Mississippi. Say hello to my friend Gray if you see him. While Eric's doing that, please go onto iTunes at Radar Show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We'll see you on our next show.